The Seven Gates of Hell. The Seven Gates of Hell feature is a popular piece of urban folklore, a series of portals in the Hellam Township, which open an entrance to the fiery pits below. There are many different tellings of this tale, though one of the more popular versions links the gates to a former insane asylum on the outskirts of town. This story describes a fire at the asylum in the 19th century, which allowed the dangerous inmates to escape. Running wild, many of them were recaptured, beaten, or killed. Other tormented souls were trapped inside a series of gates, which they still haunt to this day. It is said that only the first gate is visible by daylight, and this lies on private land just off the town's Trout Run Road. By night, the other gates become visible in this quiet wooded corner of the township. Passing through all seven will take the visitor straight to hell, and it's reported that no one has yet passed 5 and returned to talk about the tale. Another story deals with a local doctor, accounts of whom range from erratic to psychotic. He was said to have owned the land on which he built a series of particular gates leading deeper and deeper into the forest. The myth has caused a lot of upset and frustration for the residents of Hellam Township, and the township's own website has denounced the stories as nonsense. There was never an asylum on Trout Run Road, while the notorious doctor, who did in fact exist, only ever built one gate on his property. Other claims that Hellam Township was named after hell itself are also dispelled. The name becomes a corruption of Hallamshire, an area of South Yorkshire in England. Try as they might to dissolve visitors, however, Hellam Township still receives its fair share of hell seekers, as well as numerous satanic cults who repeatedly use Hellam as a meeting place from time to time. There have been numerous instances of residents calling the police as visitors trespass through the private land in search of the gates. Goblin of Easton. There was once a monk at the mission who loved money and power more than he ever loved God. He would hear the confession of the good folk who attended the mission, and then would blackmail them into giving him gold and silver to keep their darkest secrets. He turned many a wayward sinner's feet towards the fires of hell rather than the gates of heaven, encouraging their crimes in secret while he revealed them to the public. It was after he beat one poor old woman to death that the evil monk was imprisoned and sentenced to hang for his crimes. But just after he was cut down from the noose and pronounced dead, his corpse began to transform before the horrified eyes of the people. The face twisted and small tusks sprang from either side of his nose. His shock of white hair grew long and greasy, and 2 pointed canines emerged from the slit of his mouth. The goblin monk opened eyes that glowed yellow even in the light of noonday, and sprang to feet that now ended in claws rather than toes. The people screamed and fled, and no prayer of his former brother in faith could banish this goblin. It disappeared deep into the forest, only to return at night to prey upon the monks of the mission who had been responsible for its death. After 5 of the brothers had fallen to the goblin, the rest of the monks abandoned the mission and moved to another part of the country. Since that time, the mission house has slowly fallen into ruin. The Storm Hag. Since first explored in the 1600s, the Great Lakes have earned a reputation as being a treacherous and unforgiving waterway. Extremely violent storms seem to appear out of nowhere, taking both vessel and crew to a watery grave. In 1977, author J. Growley, The Great Lakes Triangle, proposed there was some sinister forces behind all of these mysterious disappearances. But many sailors on Lake Erie at least have a theory for centuries on the unexplainable storms and shipwrecks that plague the freshwater lake. The Storm Hag. According to the legend, Storm Hag lives at the bottom of the lake. She is a hideous demon. Her yellow eyes shine in the dark like those of a cat. Her skin is a pale shade of green. Her teeth sharp and pointed as a shark, able to tear the skin off of her victims. They are also green, which gives her another less common name, Jenny Greenteeth. Her hands have long pointed nails like talons that have a poison with which she paralyzes the poor soul with one small prick. Her arms are long and strong, and they wrap around her victims, making it impossible for them to escape her flesh-hungry attack. The old legend tells that, like a siren before she attacks, she sings a quiet song over the waves that few have survived to retell. Traditionally, the song she sings is, "Come into the water, love, dance beneath the waves, where dwell the bones of sailor lads inside my saffron caves." And as soon as the seaman hears this song, the Storm Hag attacks. She calls up a violent storm that tosses the crew off of the vessel, and she can lurch up from the water and grab them with her long arms. Others tell that she waits the storm out, and when the sailors believe all is calm, she rises from the waves, spitting lightning and wind with such force the entire vessel sinks within a few seconds. Local history has it that, on a fall evening in 1782, an Owler ship was caught in a bad storm on the lake and desperately tried to make it back to port. It was tossed to and fro violently for more than an hour when it was in sight of land, and the storm abruptly stopped. The clouds dissipated and the moonlight of the full moon illuminated the water. The sailors could see that they were less than a mile from the peninsula and home. Without warning, the water next to the boat foamed, and the Storm Hag burst forth from the surface. She spewed venom and attacked the crew, unleashing her fury upon them. Within seconds, the ship and its crew were taken beneath the waves to their doom. Witnesses on shore apparently heard the screams of the sailors echoing across the lake just before the vessel disappeared. To this day, some of those who sail near the peninsula claim to hear phantom screams of the victims who were taken long ago. Congelier Mansion. Formerly known as the most haunted house in America, the home of carpetbagger Charles Wright Collinger, his Mexican wife Lyda, and young servant girl Essie, was located at 1129 Ridge Avenue in the Manchester North Side neighborhood of Pittsburgh. The story of its life as a haunted house begins in the winter of 1871 with Lyda's discovery of Charles having an affair with the maid. Lyda was so enraged that she fatally stabbed Charles and chopped off Essie's head. For the next 20 years, the house remained vacant. It was remodeled to accommodate railroad workers in 1892, but they soon moved out, claiming to hear the sobbing and screaming of a woman. The most haunted house in America once again stood vacant. Around 1900, Dr. Adolph C. Burchester bought the home. Keeping to himself, the doctor was rarely seen by his neighbors. Then, on August 12, 1901, the family next door heard a terrifying scream at the residence. When they ran outside to investigate, the neighbors saw a red explosion-like flash shooting through the house. The earth under them trembled and the sidewalls cracked. Every window in the doctor's home was shattered. When officials entered the house to investigate, they found a decomposed female body strapped to the bed and 5 headless young women in basement graves. The doctor had been experimenting with several heads. Apparently, he had been able to keep some alive for a short period of time after the decapitation. As a result of its reputation for being haunted, the house had stood empty for several more years, before undergoing its second remodeling to ready it for housing immigrant gas company workers. These workers experienced many strange occurrences, but wrote them off as pranks by American workers they had replaced for lower wages. One night, things took a tragic turn, however, and 2 of the workers were found dead in the basement. One had a board driven like a stake through his chest, and the other was hanging from a rafter. These men had both been seen alive just minutes prior. In 1920, the famous scientist and inventor, Thomas Edison, came to study the house. Edison spoke of a machine that he was building to allow communication with the dead. Edison died before the mechanism was perfected. Weiner and Obster wrote that Thomas Edison's visit to the house apparently influenced his strong belief in the afterlife. In September 1927, a drunk was arrested who claimed to be Dr. Adolf. He told police gruesome stories of sex orgies, demonic possession, torture, and murder that had occurred in the house. The authorities could not determine if the man they had in custody was indeed the doctor. The man was released after a month and was never seen or heard from again. Days were numbered for this haunted house, which everyone was convinced was evil. Nearby the site, that is now a science center, stood the largest natural gas storage facility in the world. On the morning of November 15th, 1927, the giant gas storage tank owned by the gas company exploded with such an awesome force that it was felt across the country. One of the workers described the destruction as houses collapsed and chimneys toppled, brick, broken glass, twisted pieces of steel, and other debris raised on the heads of the dazed and shaken residents who had rushed into the streets from their wrecked homes, believing that it was an earthquake that hit the city. The force was so strong that it repeatedly blew out windows throughout downtown, Mount Washington, and as far away as East Liberty. Dozens of manufacturing sites and hundreds of homes were damaged or destroyed within a 20-mile radius. The most haunted house in America, which once stood at the present-day site of the Route 65 I-279 interchange, was obliterated in the explosion. It was the only structure destroyed in the blast, for which no trace was ever found. The Green Man. As the story goes, the Green Man had an accident that ruined his face. Some say he was a West Mifflin man working for the power company, struck by lightning or shocked by a downed power line. Others suggest he was a factory worker splashed with acid. Whatever the cause, all agreeing that the accident turned his skin green and melted his facial features together. Depending on who's telling the tale, the Green Man either died immediately or survived and holed up in a boarded-up house. A variant of the story gives late-night thrill-seekers a place to look for the green glow of their hero's skin. The accident took place near one of the many abandoned railroad tunnels in Greater Pittsburgh, and that's where he ran to after the incident. Many different locations are said to be the site of the Green Man's tunnel, but the most popular is South Park Township, just off Snowden Road, a site used by the township for storing rock salt for snowy days. Here are the facts. For 50 years, right up till the 1980s, Raymond Robinson used to walk the lengthy road between Koppel and New Galley for exercise. He did this under the cover of night because of what happened to him way back in the summer of 1919. On a dare, the 8-year-old Raymond had climbed up the pylon that held the power lines for the Harmony Line trolley in Marado. A bird had built its nest up there, and his buddies wanted to know if there were any eggs in it. Ray never saw the nest or anything else again. He lost both his eyes in the accident, so he never got to see the Beaver Falls newspaper headline about what had happened up that pylon. Marado lad 8, shocked by live wire, will die. But he did prove that headline writer wrong. 2 months later, the Daily Times reported, in spite of all his affliction, the boy is in good humor. After a lengthy recuperation, Ray Robinson was released, with a prosthetic nose connected to a pair of dark glasses that concealed his empty eye sockets. He passed his days listening to the radio, reading, and making belts and wallets out of leather. He mowed the lawn with a manual mower, and at night he went for walks around Route 351. The word soon spread about this disfigured night hiker. Local teenagers calling him Charlie No Face. People from further called him the Green Man. The folk began driving the area just to meet him. Some nights there was such a flow of traffic to the road that the police would be there to move things along. Generally, Ray would hide when he heard traffic approaching, because of a few disrespectful types. But some curiosity seekers befriended him, and he came to appreciate their company. They'd give him cigarettes and beer, and sometimes snap pictures with him. During the Vietnam War, draftees from Pittsburgh took these pictures with them, and so the legend of the Green Man spread across the theater of war and back to the United States. And the stories became more exaggerated as they were retold. They are still told to this day, even though Ray Robinson had died on June 11th, 1985. He is buried at Grand View Cemetery near the site of his accident, but his legend walks on. I hope you ghouls enjoyed these PA urban legends. As most of you know, I live in Pennsylvania, and I knew a good deal of these. Except for the mansion one, I didn't know about it, which is probably why I butchered the crap out of that name. But a lot of them I did know, and holy crap, I always forget how, like, spooky PA is. There's a lot of haunted places here. There's a lot of legends as well. So it was really fun to learn up and read about, you know, my area. Who else here is in PA? Let me know in the comments. I want to know. Maybe I can do like a little baby mini meetup somewhere in PA. That would be fun. But as always, ghouls, the last video will be on the top left. The next video will be on the bottom left. All my social medias are on the screen, as well as in the description box below. And remember, there's always someone or something watching you.